Hey folks, my name is Jen. Oh boy. So I started filming this already, and my battery died, and in the course of changing my battery, apparently I accidentally hit the little button that also has like the memory card, and it fucked and erased everything, so here we are. This is my week so far. You guys don't care about that? I am in hell. Here we go. What I have been explaining in the previous clip that now no longer exists, I actually had a different video planned for this week, but it's just not gonna happen by the time I need to be editing and posting stuff. So, in the interest of saving my stress levels, we're moving up next week's video to this week, and next week's video is going to be the introduction of books that I'm hoping to read during the summer. In fact, quite an absurdly ambitious stack of books. It's actually little piles of books that I have stacked around me. This is also extremely tentative because I have done screwed the pooch on a lot of the books that I plan to read in the spring, but it's honestly understandable with my brain lately. So instead we're going to be kind to me, and skip right on to the books that I seem to be in the mood for. I do have a few books right here that are unread things, either unread things from this season that I'm deciding to roll over, because I really need to finish them, or things that I'm continuing, or a couple of books that that were from last year that I'm now in the mood to go back to them again. So let's look at that pile first. So first up, we've got Great Expectations by Charles Dickens. I only got like a couple of chapters into this one, and I'm enjoying it so far, but I got kind of out of the mood to read it, but I'm hoping to get back in the mood to read it again. So, yes, this is carrying over. This is a classic. A young boy who is an orphan, who lives with his brother-in-law, and who is a really good guy, and his abusive sister. And he ends up being invited to go to this grand house and play with the haughty ward of this crazy old lady, and he falls in love with the old lady's ward, and the years pass by, things ensue from there, stuff's really complicated. Yeah. I'm attempting to finish up is Don Quixote by Miguel de Cervantes. It's a buddy read that I've been doing with girls over the GKBC. I'm so far behind, I'm so sorry. I've been dragging my feet. I'm just having a time. But I am only a few chapters away from the end. I just kind of, again, dragging my feet. But I know 100% this is not a book that I am going to finish by the end of May. I just know me. I'm gonna continue to drag it out here. But this is what I'm hoping to finish, like, one of the first things in June, hopefully. Then I've got also The Eyes of the Dragon by Stephen King. This is a fantasy novel by Stephen King, involving like this world having to do with the fantasies of two royal brothers, and basically there's like terrible, wicked enchantments and terrible secrets and stuff like that. I started this last year, was enjoying it, but then put it down, just didn't pick it up again. Such is life. So, hoping to get back into this soon. I actually think I started doing a read of this a couple of years ago. I was annotating it, as you can see, and I just stopped. But the book is Caramello by Sandra Cisneros, and this has to do with this sprawling family and family history, mostly told through, I think her name's Lala? Yeah, Lala, involving her family of aunts, uncles, mothers, fathers, Lala's 6 older brothers. Every year they all pack up into these cars and drive down to Mexico City to stay with the little grandfather and the awful grandmother. And it's basically a slightly unreliable narration of Lala telling the story of her family, especially like, why is the awful grandmother so awful? The book I started last year that I really want to get back to is My Fine Fellow, and this is by Jenica Cohen, and this is a My Fair Lady gender swapped retelling involving food. And then another thing that I want to get back to is The Dark Prophecy. This is book 2 in the Trials of Paul series by Rick Riordan. This is following the god Apollo. He has been turned mortal, and he has to undertake a bunch of challenges to hopefully gain his immortality back again. And this is also, there's like a big baddie underlying plot, of course, within the series. So I only got like a chapter into book 2 and just never continued, so I do want to finish reading this one and then continue on to the next 3 books in the series. And then I also have some rereads. Actually, honestly, this is going to be the summer of rereads. I'm really feeling the rereads, and I do have some books that are new to me within that as well. There's like immediate rereads. So I think I mentioned it in other videos recently, but I decided to start doing a reread of the Chronicles of Bradane series, and I am in book 3, The Castle of Lear. I am almost halfway through, and I would like to get back into this and continue on and finishing my reread for the next couple of books. And then I might also pick up The Foundling. The Foundling is like a collection of short stories that have to do with the world of Prydain, so I might also pick that up after I finish reading the actual like series. I also desperately need to finish my reread and annotation of The Count of Monte Cristo by Alexandre Dumas. I want to finish this because I have a video that I really want to make about this, and I would prefer to do it sooner rather than later. I do have another couple of videos within this series of videos that I could make instead, but I don't know. I'm going to do a last-ditch effort to plow my way through this so I can finally finish my notes and make that video. But if I'm having trouble getting through that, I might skip the discussion on my favorite classics and skip instead to other favorites of mine and talk about those instead at the moment. We'll see. Other books that I'm really desperately wanting to reread lately. I have seen people talk about this recently, and I did start a reread of it last fall, I think, and then I just never continued with it because I had other things that I was reading. And I have been, I don't know, just seeing other people talk about it recently, I was like, man, I really want to get back to my reread of that because it's just really good. I mean, really sad, but really good. And that is Beloved by Toni Morrison. This is a story about a woman named Sethi. She escaped slavery with her children, but is absolutely haunted by the things that happened to her, the things that she did to escape from slavery, and it has been years. It has been years since then. This is set in rural Ohio? Yeah. Rural Ohio, years after the Civil War, and it talks about that kind of dealing with the grief and the still being haunted by the horrors and then in walks a mysterious young woman named Beloved, and things get kicked up a notch. I've been in the mood to do a reread of some Julia Alvarez, and I love In the Time of the Butterflies. I think that's my favorite book of hers, but I don't know if I will be rereading that at this moment, or if that might be something I reread later. The first things I really wanted to pick up were How the Garcia Girls Lost Their Accents, and also Yo. And these are two books following the same characters, so it is about the Garcia girls. Carla, Sandra, Yolanda, and Sophia. And this is about them and what happened when their family needed to flee from the Dominican Republic, and they landed in California? No, New York City. I lied. They arrived in New York City in 1960 to a life that is completely unlike what they knew in the Caribbean. And it's about them kind of growing up and adjusting, and the kind of struggles, like their struggles of assimilating, their trying to find new lives and stuff, and dealing with basically trying to forget some of the terrible things that happened back home before they had to flee. So this is a book about them. I believe was one of my school books. Yeah, I believe this is one of my books in college, and then I ended up buying Yo, which is a sequel, because this is supposed to be a book by Yolanda, or Yo, who made characters out of her family and wrote this like really intimate book about them. And this is all about Yo told by her family, because they felt that they needed to expose some things about her because she exposed many things about them. So this is their narrative telling Yolanda's story. Yeah, I remember really enjoying these. That's why in college, after I read this for a class and enjoyed it so much, I ended up getting Yo and reading it on my own. So yeah, I would like to reread these. And then also, because I've been seeing a lot of it over the past few months, because I guess this was made into a musical, I've been really wanting to also reread The Color Purple by Alice Walker. I remember I read this when I was a teenager, and it was very impactful, and I would just really like to pick it up again. I've mentioned this before, I've been wanting to do a reread / read of the Clive Cussler books. He wrote a lot of adventure books, and a good chunk of them had to do with Dirk Pitt, who is this, I forget what his exact title is. He is like an explorer, but he works for a specific part of the government, a fictional part of the government, the National Underwater and Marine Agency. And I forget what his actual title is. I think at some point he's Special Projects Manager or something, but he's not that way in the beginning. Basically, he is like James Bond and Indiana Jones, but undersea. Absolutely crazy. And there's so many books, so many books. I read a decent chunk of them when I was a teenager because my dad had them. I've read a couple as an adult, and I've collected a bunch here, and I've really been wanting to do like a reread, but like a chronological read through of not all of them, but of the ones that I currently own. Anyway, I don't think you necessarily have to read these in order. At the time when I was picking them up, I basically read whichever one was most interesting to me at the time. But yeah, I would like to do a chronological read because there are a couple of things that happen at one point which would surprise you if you did read them out of order. Within this series, chronologically, there are a couple that I don't think I will be revisiting, such as Dirk Pitt's first adventure, Pacific Vortex. The first time I read this, I hated it. So I don't know if I will be picking this up again. The next book chronologically is Iceberg. This is a book that I got partway through like a year or so ago. I was really excited to read it and then just did not. Let me see. How do I explain these really quick? First is the Pacific Vortex. Dirk Pitt plunges into the perilous waters of the Pacific Vortex, fog-shrouded sea zone where dozens of ships have vanished without a trace. The latest victim is the awesome super sub Starbuck, a nuclear arsenal. He has to find it, salvage it before the sea explodes. This one, a survey mission over the North Atlantic exposes a missing luxury yacht frozen inside a 1,000,000-ton mass of ice. Ship vanished, en route to a secret White House rendezvous, making it the responsibility of Numa to find out what happened. So, Dirk Pitt has to figure stuff out. Yeah, like I said, stopped reading it because Dirk did some stuff that was not okay. It was probably okay at the time. Well, it still wasn't okay at the time, but it was more socially acceptable at the time. I found it distasteful, so I stopped reading, but I would like to get back to this. Finish it. Next book chronologically is Raise the Titanic, and I've talked about this a lot. I feel like this is another one I got partway through and stopped reading. This is before Robert Ballard and everybody found the Titanic on the ocean floor and realized it had broken into 2 pieces. Well, I mean, people knew that the Titanic was broken into pieces because survivors had told them they saw it break into 2 pieces, but they were only women and children, so who believes them? So everybody insisted that it was still probably in 1 piece. This is basically, there is a incredibly rare substance within the hold of the Titanic. It went across, it was on it during the crossing, and unfortunately it sank with it. And Numa needs to find the ship, salvage it, grab that stuff because it can protect America from destruction. Yeah. So Americans want to get it before the Russians do. Typical 1970s, 80s kind of thing going on. Yeah, I want to get back to this because when they say raise the Titanic, they literally mean at one point they will pick it up from the ocean floor because they still believe it's in 1 piece. Yeah, that's all I know about that because I know of the movie that came out. Yes, so chronologically that's the next one. Then after that is Cyclops, and this one has to do with a blimp. Financier disappears on a treasure hunt in an antique blimp. The blimp drifts towards Florida. There's a bunch of Soviet cosmonauts all dead in it, and Dirk Pitt discovers a shocking scheme. A covert group of U.S. industrialists has put a colony on the moon, a secret base they will defend at any cost. Bonkers, right? Absolutely bonkers. I also did not like this for the first time I read it. So I don't know if I will be reading this one again, but I might. Next one in the series is actually, or next one chronologically that I have is my favorite of them all, and it is Sahara. And this has to do with like missing things. So Dirk Pitt is in the Nile. He's searching for treasure. He thwarts an attempted assassination of a UN scientist who is investigating a disease that is like killing a whole bunch of North Africans, and they believe that the epidemic is like pollution that someone is like orchestrating. So Pitt and everybody are trying to like basically go up against this supreme baddie and stop his, like, evil plus and the disgusting shit that he is doing. But at the same time, they uncover the truth between enduring mysteries, the fate of a Civil War ironclad, and its connection with Lincoln's assassination, and the last flight of a long-lost female pilot. All of that sounds so crazy and insane, but I loved this book. I've read this like 2 or 3 times, and I love it. Oh, fucking bonkers, but it's also hilarious and action-packed, and I really enjoyed it. So I want to reread this one as well. This has also been made into a movie. The movie was okay. I think Matthew McConaughey was the right choice to play Dirk Pitt, but I think that's a discussion for another day. Next in the series is Dragon, which there's a crash B-29 bomber that was carrying the 3rd atomic bomb to Japan in 1945. Cargo lost in sea for 50 years is at the heart of this thriller, where a group of fanatics are trying to basically find it, and Dirk Pitt has to save the day. This one, I don't know if I've read this one. So this might either be a reread or a new to me read. Then next up chronologically is Inca Gold. This one I just read like a year or 2 ago. I reread it. Desperate call for help from an archaeological expedition brings Dirk Pitt to a sacred well in the Andes. He attempts to rescue 2 divers lost in the well, leads him to a deadly confrontation with a band of ruthless art thieves who plunder ancient sites for their artifacts. He ends up going to the lost city of the dead in search of a Spanish galleon, and yeah, basically treasure hunt, trying to get it, keep the treasure safe from greedy assholes. That's where it's like kind of like Indiana Jones-esque thing. Next up is one that I've definitely read before, and it is Shockwave, a clipper ship bound for Australia's penal colony is crushed. A few survivors wash up on a deserted island. Among them are people who discover like a bunch of diamonds. That's in the 1800s. Flash forward to current day then. Dirk Pitt rescues a descendant of these people who found the diamonds during a cataclysm that killed thousands of marine animals plus nearly 200 people aboard a cruise ship. And there's basically terrible shit going on. The carnage is due to global diamond operations run by her, like, the survivors' terrible family. So, gotta investigate that. Next up chronologically is Atlantis Found, another one that I have read before. This was wicked cool. It starts with an Antarctic whaler stumbling onto an aged wreck, its grisly frozen crew, and crates of odd antiquities. I don't know about the antiquities part, but there is a story about a crew finding a older ship full of frozen people, and at this point nobody's really sure if this is a legit thing or if it's just made up or whatever. It's a creepy story anyway. Then flash forward basically to a research ship that has Dirk Pitt and a bunch of people in his company, and it's set upon and nearly sunk by a ship that should have died 56 years before, and Dirk Pitt of course investigates and finds, a diabolical enemy, again, because he's always finding diabolical enemies trying to blow up the world. And then there's Celtic Empire, which I'm not sure what this one's about. It says, murders of a team of scientists in El Salvador, deadly collision in the waterways of Detroit, an attack by tomb raiders on an archaeological site along the banks of the Nile. And these 3 mysteries are basically brought together into this one book. And then there's also The Devil's Sea. And that is a spoiler. I'm not going to say that part. Dirk Pitt discovers a forgotten plane crash in the Philippine Sea. unearthing clues pointing to an invaluable Buddhist artifact that has been lost for decades. He's not the only one making earth-shattering discoveries. During a mission to recover a failed hypersonic missile, he finds himself racing against a rogue Chinese military team who have hijacked a ship strong enough to stir the ocean into a devil's sea. So, crazy bonkers shit again. And I think this is the first one that came out after Clive died. So his son Dirk, who wrote a bunch of the books with him, finished that one up on his own. And then this one that is the most tentative on this list, I think, is because it's not a Dirk Pitt adventure, but it is still Clive Cussler, and it's called The Chase, and this is a historical fiction one, and it has to do with, yeah, some different stuff. April 1950, rusting hulk of a steam locomotive rises in from the deep waters of Montana Lake. Inside is all that remains of 3 people who died 44 years before. And then it flashes back to 1906. For 2 years, the western states of America have been suffering an extraordinary crime spree, a string of bank robberies by a single man who cold-bloodedly murders any and all witnesses and vanishes without a trace. The U.S. government brings in the best men it can find, a no-nonsense detective named Isaac Bell, who is now going to, like, basically try to find this mysterious train robber. And so this is, like, the first in the Isaac Bell detective series. And I've never read an Isaac Bell, so excited about that. That's that series that I'm both reading and rereading. Then another series I'm wicked excited to get back to. I think I talked about this when I had like one of my book hauls last year. And this is a trilogy by Isabel Allende, and the first book is City of Beasts. This trilogy is following Alexander Cold. Yeah, Alexander Cold ends up joining his fearless grandmother. She is a magazine reporter for the International Geographic. She's heading on an expedition to the Amazon, and Alex manages to finagle his way into going with her. And along with the others on the team, there's an anthropologist, a local guide, and his young daughter, Nadia, and a doctor. And their goal is to document the legendary Yeti of the Amazon known as the Beast. And Alexander and Nadia both get in touch with the hidden worlds and magic of the Amazon, basically. And that's all I'm going to say about that, because things get crazy, and I read this when I was younger, and I don't honestly fully remember everything about it, other than I was enraptured. So, the first book is City of the Beasts, second is Kingdom of the Golden Dragon, and third is Forest of the Pygmies. Like I said, I've read this book, I loved it, but I never read the other two, so... I have a series of books. They're all like Victoria Holt books, which, what are they considered? Romantic suspense, perhaps? Basically, I have this big old stack here of books. These are some of the books that I kind of inherited from my grandmother. I have read a couple of these before. These are books that she caught me reading romance novels and disapproved of that because I think I was like 13 or 14, and she didn't think they were inappropriate because they were, you know, spicy. So she told me if I wanted to read about romances, but she also is the one who introduced me to Agatha Christie and Murder, She Wrote, and all of that. She figured, well, it'll also hold my attention because there's mysterious elements to it. So she introduced me to the world of Victoria Holt and also Phyllis Whitney, which I have read all of the Phyllis Whitney books of hers that I now own a few years ago, but never got around to a full read-through of all of the Victoria Holts. So, The Shivering Sands. I read this a couple of times. This is the first one I read. Was it? Yeah. It has to do with a woman searching for her missing sister who was an archaeologist. All they have is each other. Her sister's gone. Yeah, she goes to this mysterious manor to find her. Super creepy, super cool. Next book is The Captive. I read this back when I was a teenager. It involves a shipwreck and I believe, wreck. She's saved by a couple of the men on board, but unfortunately she ends up being pulled into, I think, somebody's harem or something? Yeah, they're sold to this guy and she's put into his harem and stuff's complicated. Anyway, next up is Daughter of Deceit, and this I believe has to do with a young woman who, when she was a child, something terrible happened and her life was ruined when, because of some shady people, her mother, something terrible happened to her mother and she's had a rough life since, and this is her as an adult now trying to like worm her way in and find answers and figure shit out and maybe revenge. I'm not entirely certain. I started reading this and didn't continue, so I want to get to that. The next one is The Demon Lover. I'm not 100% sure about this one other than it has to do with artists of miniatures, like the tiny like miniature little paintings and stuff like that. A lot of these are historical, to be honest. They're not present day. Next one is The House of a Thousand Lanterns, and this has to do with a young woman who I believe either her family are like missionaries or for some reason they're living in China. Maybe not. I can't remember. Anyway, I don't remember how I felt about that one, but we'll see. Next up is The Landauer Legacy. Also haven't read this one. This one has to do with this rich old family, this great big manor house, and a young woman who I believe is trying to insinuate her way into this family. There's a lot of that. This next one, this one was my second favorite. I read this a couple of times. I absolutely adored it. It is Lord of the Fire Island. This is also about a young woman who is searching for her family, or the answers to her family, and she insinuates herself in by ways of like deceit into this old like manor house on an island, trying to find out more about her parents and her family and the whole history of that. Next after that is The Mask of the Enchantress, and I read this a couple of years ago and I could not freaking tell you what it's about because I 100% do not remember, other than the fact that the main character is also using deceit and living a lie, and yeah. I don't know what Victoria Holt's obsession with that was, but she used it a lot. Next up is Road to Paradise Island. I read this when I was a teenager, haven't read it since. This has to do with, again, a young woman basically discovers some weird stuff in her family's home. Items related to an ancestor that grew up in her family's home, and I believe there's some terrible tragedy or something that happens at some point here. So, yeah. And then the last of these is The Time of the Hunter's Moon, and this is the one that I know the least about. I believe this has to do, it's some type of romance. I think it might be a forbidden romance, and something about a school, I believe. For books that I just feel like I'm in the mood for, with the Clive Cusslers and everything, I might be in the mood for some good old adventures still, so I also have The Goonies selected because I've liked this movie, but this is the movie novelization of it. Actually usually like movie novelizations. They give a little more context to everything, so yeah, I might pick that up, or this might be, if we go on a vacation this year, this might be one of the vacation reads. Then I've also got some nonfiction that I'm interested in. In the interest of, I don't know, I might have screwed up on the 24 and 2024, but I'm still gonna try to get through some of them anyway. And there's a couple of them right here that were nonfiction, one of which is 10 Days in a Madhouse by Nolly Bly, and this was the thing that put her on the map pretty much was when she went undercover in Blackwell's Island, which was an insane asylum that were mistreating people, and she went undercover, basically made herself look hysterical to get herself put onto the island so she could investigate, find out what the truth was, and then expose the terrible treatment of women in this asylum. Groundbreaking journalism. And this is basically her account of that, which was published. So, that is that. And then I believe this is also on my list for the 2024, and it is The Gift of Fear. Survival Signals That Protect Us from Violence by Gavin de Becker. This is a book that I've heard talked about on a couple of podcasts that I listen to a lot, and it basically just has to do with predicting trouble and using your own natural instinct and fear and basically tapping into that and figuring out, hey, this person's making me feel weird. I don't want to be rational about it and just try to explain it away. There's a reason that alarm bells are happening. Here's some possible reasons, because everybody has inner instincts, and those inner instincts were meant to keep us safe, evolutionary wise, and we still retain some of those inner instincts of fear. And it taps into how to protect yourself and stuff like that, because this guy has worked with I think the FBI and stuff. U.S. Supreme Court, members of Congress, said he's worked to help protect people. He is basically the authority on the protection of public figures and predicting violence. So, and I'm also in the mood for just some fun nonfiction. So I've got The Feather Thief that I picked up fairly recently, which is Beauty, Obsession, and the Natural History Heist of the Century by Kirk Wallace Johnson. This is about a heist of dead birds. Absolutely bonkers. And then we have North Country, Personal Journey Through the Borderland by Howard Frank Mosher. I absolutely love Howard Frank Mosher. He's one of my favorite authors, and this is basically celebrate his 50th birthday. He set off with his wife across the top border of the US on a road trip. So he went, basically coast to coast. And this is the memoir about that trip. These last three are, I think, the most tentative of everything on my list, because I feel like I might be in the mood for romance, but I am not 100% certain. But I like to give myself options, so here we go. The first of these is a book called Between a Rake and a Hard Place, and it is by Connie Mason and Mia Marlowe. And this is about a young woman debutante, but the Crown has basically signed this guy, Sir Jonah Sharp, he is supposed to seduce her and keep her in line, basically, and then finds her the first time he meets her. She's wearing trousers and a mustache in his gentleman's club, because she is trying to sneak into the gentleman's club and make herself look like a gentleman, because she's not allowed to go into, I believe, the libraries, and what she really wants is knowledge, and she wants the freedom and the ability to go into the library and study and do great things like that. She can't as a woman. So, interesting. Also, title's hilarious. And then I have a couple of Nora Roberts books. One, which is Carolina Moon, which is about a young woman who ends up returning home many years after this terrible, murder of her best friend when they were kids. And she's coming home, I forget why she's coming home, but she's basically come back home and still dealing with her own guilt and everything, and that killer was never caught, by the way, and he might still be lurking around. And then there's also Blue Smoke, which I might have read before. I might not have. I can't remember. This is following a young woman who, when she was a child, her family's pizzeria was a victim of arson, and she was very inspired by the community coming together and kind of helping them out, but when she looked at the flames, she also found a fascination for that and decided that she wanted to investigate things. So she decided basically to become an arson investigator for like I believe it's the local police department, possibly, or the fire department, something like that. Basically, yeah, she's like become an arson investigator. But there is someone else within the community that is also fascinated by fire, but in a very different way than she is. So yeah, that is a massive amount of things that I kind of want to read in the summer. I don't know if that will happen or not. We'll see. We will have to see. Anyway, I am hopeful, fairly confident I'll get to at least some of these anyway, because it's the shit that I'm currently in the mood for. Anyway, thank you guys for watching. Thank you for always watching. If you've read any of these, let me know. If there are any that you think I should definitely try to put higher priority this summer, let me know. Also, let me know what you guys planning on reading this summer. Are you also feeling like adventure and like thrillery stuff, or is there anything you're particularly excited about? Yeah. But that's it. Thank you for watching. I hope you're having a great day, weekend, wherever you're at, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.